He built a logic-gated computer within Claude.
This was a business case where AI failed. What do you see AI, people are getting horribly wrong about AI?
Claude's really good at saying, yes, you're a genius.
Yeah.
Taste is often the most important thing, and a lot of these LLMs have awful taste. I had to pitch my answers in a way that the LLM would believe for content. I just assumed that everything's AI.
We're not ready for hardware yet.
No, not yet.
I'm here with Jeremy Healsmith, a four-time founder who exited twice, raised money, and was a VC once, and he also won a UK award for, Jeremy?
Cutting edge data science research, but I've also had several failures as well. But I'm really pleased to be here with you today, Sergey.
That's awesome. Thank you. Great that you joined. I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about risks in AI and real use cases that we see in the field. And I wanted to talk first about this story of overbuilding and story about like ridiculous use case from subject matter experts, because you have a story that I thought was just incredible, and I think you need to. Yeah, I would love to you to share.
So I've been working with, to be honest, a really incredible founder. He has incredibly deep domain expertise, but no software engineering experience, and he built something that I'd never seen before. Using many millions of tokens of context, he built a logic-gated computer within Claude. So you probably could have reduced the whole thing to several hundred kilobytes of Python, but instead using an incredible corpus of constituting documents, self-recursive tests, like well-designed prompts. He's made a computer within Claude. And so, I've been working with him to tease this out and make it a little bit more efficient. So I think a few of his early runs through this program took several days to do.
Okay, so
but, just an amazing use of AI that I'd never seen before.
So you, I mean, this sounds very complicated, but then it actually is a lot more simple in reality, the way that it works, which we will get to. But at what point you were brought in to the project?
So he essentially hit a ceiling with Claude. Like, he was just hitting its context limit every time. So getting terrible context rot, results that didn't make sense. So I'm working with him to take the semantic reasoning that is necessary to the project and preserve that, but just decompose all the mathematics into like an MCP skill library, put it somewhere sensible so this can actually run all the way through, more or less making it a efficient computer program instead of an amazing series of contracts between a single LLM instance.
So the fact that it was consuming this system, what was it supposed to do?
So it's a very sophisticated and impressive sports prediction system.
Okay.
So I get it, like, he very much a domain expert. So it was doing some genuinely useful and interesting things, but just absolutely hit the limits of what is possible within an LLM. And I just thought it was very interesting because in all use cases going forward, all product managers, executives, people on the street are going to be using Claude or Codex or whatever system they prefer to start building these programs. And that's exactly how he'd done it. And so it was very interesting to see, I suppose, someone without a software background reinventing tests and rediscovering the need for like efficiency and things like this from scratch, but within an LLM environment. So I think it's a real change to how we need to think about software development going forward.
But so let's if we look at, okay, this is a sports prediction software, and do you like, how was it supposed to work, and what was the complication? Because there was a use case and it became like incredibly complicated of how it all happened. So what was that? What was it supposed to do? And then how did it get to a point where like it kind of blew out of the proportion, all the token usage and what it was supposed to be? Because I think this is a very interesting sort of journey of what happened.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of things that truly are relevant to an LLM, and then like a bunch of quite sophisticated statistical reasoning in between. So, the LLM would fetch results and data and boil that down into like analysis. It would then cross-reference against some truly enormous Excel spreadsheets, and perform modeling like convergence and figuring out slopes of graphs and more or less predicting what's going to happen next week in a particular sport. So very, very sophisticated, very relevant. More or less taking a Vegas prediction system out of a computer and putting it into Claude or OpenAI.
But at the same time, though, you were saying that this could have been done a lot simpler.
Yeah. So it's as a technical person, you kind of understand the need to be computationally efficient. You want things to be quick and predictable and kind of low latency, and use like low bandwidth. And that just means that you can do more with less, go faster, serve your clients better. But this first version seemed engineered on almost like the opposite principles.
Let's use
like a very token max approach.
Let's token max it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's just genuinely like something I've just never seen before, like an entire computational architecture, like memory allocation, even like because he kept running into context limits. He had like kind of malloc functions in there, but in prose, like so just a very unique way of thinking about how to make a computer program, sort of discovering it from first principles.
Right, so, but it's amazing though. And how did you what did you do with the code? Like, so you had this functionality that obviously wasn't sustainable because nobody can like run millions of tokens. I don't know every day. Or
so we've made it much more efficient in terms of compute where things need to be computed, and we've made it much more rigorous where things actually require some semantic reasoning. So we've put in agentic loops, which I haven't used Claude. Claude's really good at, has a standard SDK, and it can check its own work in the CLI properly, segregated from the main context of the chat, so we can actually get proper recursive loops and really rigorous reasoning for the bits which are genuinely computational. We've just moved those into a set of skills callable via MCP. So when the LLM finishes its semantic reasoning, it can reach for the right tool, execute the mathematical computation on that particular segment of the logic, return a value, and then carry on. So it wasn't the wrong instinct to build within the LLM. It's just a matter of applying the correct techniques to do that at scale.
Yeah, so you talked about like a lot of this LLM, horsepower could have been replaced with a couple, some kilobyte, like a relatively simple Python.
Yeah. And I think this is another thing that I see really often, which is when you're using Claude, and you would encounter this. I think everyone would encounter this.
Yeah.
It will always suggest 5 things at the end and say, hey Sergey, next on the agenda is we want to do 1, 2, 3, and have you considered about implementing this framework? And by the way, if you had 1 million users, you'd need an orchestrator between all of your machines. Maybe we should work on that next. And the problem is that it's really, really convincing, particularly if you don't have a strong technical background. And so you say, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess this sounds like the right thing to do. And so you click yes, and then you start building these like incredibly complex, over-engineered systems that unfortunately consume 1 million tokens of context, and so therefore lose sight of the entire bedrock which is built on. And so you end up building in these spirals. So I think again the two learnings for building in this space, maybe 3, is that 1, you should partner with a domain expert, because it's truly understanding the subject matter and the users that you're building for, which will get really good value for those users.
The output, right? Like what the good looks like.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes people who they don't know the subject, and then they come to you, where you're like, this is like what? This is a high school level thing, and you think like, oh, this is great. Like this is like 1997.
Yeah.
And Claude thinks it's great. Of course it will.
Yes. Claude's really good at saying, yes, you're a genius. We've all experienced this, and I'm sad to say that I'm not a genius, but it is nice when Claude tells me I am.
I like what convinces me is when it says, like, gives me 3 options, and one of them says in brackets recommended,
yes,
and then it says just say the word.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, yeah, that's all I need. I just say the word and it'll be taken care of.
Well, this is the great and the bad thing about it. You can feel like you're in flow because you just go, oh, recommended option, yes, 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 and it kind of never knows when to stop.
Yeah.
And so you need some kind of meta framework over that, where you can say, okay, I have a really strict design document, for example, or I've done a plan. And so you can test, okay, well, I'm at the end of the plan. Like, why are you suggesting more things to do? So I think it's very important to know where you're going, because otherwise Claude will, or Grok or Cursor, whatever you're using, it'll just carry on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, it's also like I think it also helps to know like what the output looks like, right? Like this is what it needs to be, or this is what in a range is acceptable.
Yeah.
And it's quite helpful. And I understand it's not always easy to get to that point, but like, okay, this is what is acceptable. This is what it's supposed to do. This system has one job or one main thing, and it's supposed to do this. Why doesn't it do that?
Yes. Yeah. So you've heard me literally shout at a room of people about this just recently. But one of my projects is it analyzes incoming emails for venture capitalists and assesses the pitches against their thesis. So it's really important.
It's a great use case.
That is accurate and that is traceable. So it turns out that it's very, very simple to build an agent who reads emails and then gives some kind of convincing output.
Yeah.
And you eyeball it, it looks all right. But it's a way different and much harder build to verify that it's making the right call and that you can like show the artifacts that support that. And the only way is you need to start with a corpus of tests and known results. So you know that A plus B should equal C, and then you hide that from your system, and then you give it A and B and test that it comes up with C. Now, if you don't already know what C is, it'll give you something that sounds like C, and you might be convinced. So it's just really important that you have a set, even if they're very simple, a set of predefined outcomes so you can test that your system is definitely delivering you what it says it's delivering to you.
Yeah, that's whoever figures that out, like on a robust scale, that's a real value in it.
Yeah,
there's a real value in that product.
Yeah.
Now you've talked about, I think this is a really interesting use case about something about the AI that doesn't work. Like what was this was a business case where AI failed.
Yeah,
What was
sure.
the background? Like, what was the situation?
Yeah, so we had a business that helped nonprofits find their next donor, and we were using various really exciting big data techniques to do that. We had got funding from the UK government to do this research, and I'm very proud of it. It was genuinely groundbreaking. We moved the field forward, and we discovered a number of unknown signals in large-scale transaction data to identify who might be willing to give more to charity. And yeah, it was a passion project of mine that we got, to be honest, a little carried away with, and we forgot the human touch. So when we brought this to market, we knew that it worked. We knew that we could analyze huge amounts of data, and we knew that we could deliver back interesting signals, and we knew it was all scientific. The reason why our commercial launch for that failed was we had left out the so what. So we had users being like, "Oh, this is interesting, but what am I meant to do with it?" And so translating like that AI output from something quite technical to something at a human level that is actionable and understandable.
Right.
That was the real business challenge that took us many months to figure out after that.
So with this software that you guys were building, so this goes into people who are donating.
Yeah.
And are these like certain segment or like a
Yeah, so we had billions and billions of rows of UK financial data from about 1 million UK residents going back 5 years. So we ran various machine learning models over the top of that data to identify who has, for example, a higher propensity to give to a cancer charity versus a animal welfare charity. What are the brands that they're most highly associated with? What are the behavioral triggers that might give away that they're willing to maybe give £30 instead of £20 this month? What are the triggers that might say they're going to churn entirely? So really interesting work, but bringing that down from the quite esoteric statistical kind of stochastic sort of presentation to a meaningful do this because the machine says that was very hard thing to do. So still, it's something that you talk about a lot, Sergey. It's still about storytelling and
Right.
narrative,
Right.
and it's still about communicating effectively with a user and making them understand the value.
Definitely, and we'll get to that point. And I think so. Like you have, it's like a CRM slash with like powerful analytics on top of it, right? So it shows like where the users could, where you could target certain users to essentially extend their share wallet or their
Yeah,
contributions.
that's where we got to. The initial launch was very academic, where we were just presenting signals from our data set instead of overlaying it onto the users data set. And to be honest, like that's in large part a user validation story. We kind of got led around by the nose by where we got funding from. So we had validated the problem in the first instance by interviewing a number of potential users. And then we got this Innovate UK funding, which influenced the way that we did the build because they had certain requirements. And then we'd found that by the time we'd finished the build, those requirements had drifted us from what our initial customer research had told us, and we got really carried away and excited during the project. So, just the core business learning there is it's not about the technology; it's always about a customer.
It's about the customer. And what was the AI role in that? Like that was I would imagine that was the earlier days.
It was 22, so it was. now I kind of look back on it and I think, oh, it'd be so much easier to do it with today's tools. But the machine learning tools we were using were advanced, like they were top of the market at the time, but today they're just kind of like, like technology's moving so fast that the tools that we used at the time feel like a pocket calculator.
Yes. I mean, that only was like, what, 4 years ago? That's not that long ago.
Yeah, but there's just things have just come along so fast. Even just basic stuff like using natural language processing to return structured data. Like people, today we take it as trivial that an LLM would return clean JSON, right? But in 2022, you had to beg and hope and maybe do a little prayer that it will return clean JSON out of a data set. It was a nightmare.
I can imagine. At 2022, I barely used it.
Yeah.
Like the whole, what is this?
It was kind of barely usable back then.
Yeah, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. And so you were given this recommendation, or you were showing this, like the system was showing, okay, these are the people who are more likely to donate, and there was nothing happening after. Or what was the point where
we didn't make it actionable. So the way that ultimately we made it actionable was we had to correlate that data with like social listening, essentially. So we've identified your premium audience and the time that you should be contacting them and the way you should be contacting them. But then we had to give, here's the medium. So are they hanging out on Facebook? Are they hanging out on, Twitter, as it was at the time?
Yes.
And what time are they paying attention? So for example, like, you could say, there's actually like a kind of small spike around 4:00 in the afternoon for children's charities, and it's actually because the kids are home then and they're watching television, like Play School or something, or Sesame Street, and mum's finally got a minute on the phone by herself while the kid's watching TV, and so you actually saw a little spike there. So it was actually finding those action points and saying, here's something crunchy that you can do to a user that made a real difference.
Wow. Well, that's I mean, it goes to show like the user journey, the like it needs to go. You have the data, you have the analysis, but it needs to go all the way to actual recommendations.
I think also it's very easy to get carried away as a kind of someone really passionate about the technology, like I know you are as well, to be like, hey, look, it does this really cool thing, and it's easy to overestimate other people's interest in becoming technically proficient in the thing that you've spent years studying. So it's very important to find the shortest path to value for your users. It has to be short, frictionless, and easy to find. So your users always know, I do this, I get that.
Yeah. I mean, these are always. It's amazing. These principles are so simple when you talk about them or anybody talks about them, but then it's like so hard to actually not just implement. Maybe I think start with it's easy, but it's like to get them, to have them consistently applied all the way throughout the process. That is really hard.
Well, yeah, especially when you're doing everything else around running a business, right? Because you're always thinking of 15 things. And so Steve Jobs always talked about focus, and he didn't like his executives doing any more than 2 or 3 things at a time, because focus was the most valuable thing. But as a startup founder, at no point will you ever be only doing 3 things. You like, I think you might get to doing only 15 things at once, and that'll be a good day.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty much, it's true. It's like you're covering so many different bases.
Yeah.
It's
from fundraising to customer acquisition to product to checking that your meta ads are working to like something's like broken in the back end and we need to fix it now, or a new opportunity has come up, or a staff member's quitting. There's an endless number of things that you will need to attend to.
You work with clients on AI. You would go to AI meetups, AI community, and so some of the audience is business audience, some of the audience is more technical audience. What do you see AI? Well, people are getting horribly wrong about AI, or like not doing right, or like having misconceptions about AI or at the moment.
Yeah, so I think there's an underestimation of how often AI is wrong. So AI gives extremely truthy, convincing sounding answers, and like very often it sounds like the truth because it maps well onto the truth. But there's a ton of edge cases where it doesn't. So I think a lot of people treat their LLM like an oracle. So I've worked with a client recently, and I found that to convince him, I needed to send him an answer knowing that he would run it through his LLM, and then he would believe what the LLM said back to him. So instead of talking directly to him, I learned that I had to pitch my answers in a way that the LLM would believe. So I was almost like prompting the LLM to tell him the same thing back, and so it was a little bit of a mind screw. But yeah, we got him a really excellent result in the end. After I think I did that successfully enough times that he realized he could just drop the agent out of the loop and just believe the thing that I was telling him. But it took some convincing. But in the end, that was a very, very successful project, and he went on to make a bunch of sales in his field. So very pleased with that. Yeah.
What else do you find? So one is not accepting the truth or accepting a AI answer as the real answer. Anything else do you notice? Anything else? Or maybe there's a difference do you see with the AI community versus business community, like different different points where they misunderstand AI.
Yeah, I think it's the it depends where you are on the adoption curve. There's some people who are kind of all the way up the curve, and they're coding their own internal apps, and they're really excited about it, and they're all finding out that the reason SaaS exists is not because their code is particularly special. It's because they've deployed it on a stable backend, and it has good uptime, and it handles edge cases really well. And so actually you probably can't just build your own Microsoft Word internally. So there's that end of it. And I think at the other end, in the middle and on the left hand tail, there's people really missing a trick. Like the gap between what many businesses are doing and what is actually possible is really widening. Like in terms of like efficiency of outreach, of customer research, of like non-coding tasks. It's getting really good for that. And I think there's still a large cohort of people who still think, oh, it's interesting for writing an email or two. And I think they're leaving a lot of efficiency on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we're long past that point.
Yeah.
We're a long away from Starbucks.
Yeah, that's right. And it's kind of a bit age biased as well. I think there's a lot of really excellent businesses out there, maybe run by older Gen X people who like have a system that works, that's repeatable, and they could really turbocharge that business by leaning into what AI can currently do. So I'd encourage them to to go out and talk to an experienced developer like you, Sergey.
Oh, I'm just doing some things on my side, and you're doing something on your side. What I found interesting was with the deep research. Like if you, I kind of looked into the architecture of deep research, the default one on Claude, and actually like over half of the tokens that this massive thing uses is spent on validation. It's spent on actually a real independent, rigorous validation of the sources. And is this actually true? And it is in a maxed out position. And you're really you're not gathering at a certain point, you're not gathering any new data. You're just set in 70 agents to independently validate and reread everything to avoid all the bias. And it, to me, it was like, wow, absolutely. This is really where you get the independent source, where there's just so much connection with you have sub agents, you have agents, and then you have Claude MD, and there's just so much easier to poison whatever you're trying to validate.
Totally. And it invites you to if it invites you into a cognitive trap sometimes as well. So I agree that deep research is just very, very impressive. But again, it's only good if you actually read the output.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people out there who, again, are convinced by the fact that it's merely done the deep research, and they're like, well, it says this. And the benefits of that deep research are revealed by you actually engaging with it and cogitating over what it's actually saying. That's where the value actually happens. So there's still humans still have a role.
Oh yeah, the judgment is so important.
Yeah,
it's true. It's also,
like you were saying earlier, taste is often the most important thing, and a lot of these LLMs have awful taste.
Yeah, I think we talked about it, right? Like the storytelling or writing material or content creation. It's I don't know. I couldn't find the difference between some things that LLM are saying are really great, and some things are absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really find where it's how does it cross that line? I could tell in a few seconds, this is real, this is absolutely ridiculous, this is awful.
Yeah.
And I don't think it comes down to anything else other than taste and some judgment.
Yeah.
Because you already know what's good.
Yeah.
You already know what's good because you've done it a couple hundred times or whatever the amount of times.
Also, really great stuff is by definition a few standard deviations out from the center of the bell curve, right? So it represents a very small amount of AI training data. So it's very hard for an AI to do something truly great because it's fantastic at imitation and it's fantastic at blending various different sources, but for stuff that's truly outside of the mean, it doesn't have sufficient training data to do it.
Absolutely. And I've noticed that I had hard limits on certain concepts, especially when you develop a creative concept. And you develop a creative concept, this was for video projects I worked on before.
Yeah.
And it is literally cannot come up with something that is genuinely creative.
Yeah.
Even if you get it very, very specific instructions, it cannot. It keeps circling through a few ideas that for a certain project, it's all about the office, it's all about pens and staplers and everything, and you spend 4 or 5 hours building a very particular memory files, several sets of memory files, what it's not supposed to do. It cannot actually cross the line because it doesn't know.
Yeah.
And especially sometimes it's the relationship between what's real and versus what's not real. It doesn't understand a lot of times what's not real in the world.
Yes.
There are certain things that are just they don't exist, or what you're saying, the lightning's going to come and the lights are going to go off in the street. Well, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't know what happens, what doesn't happen, because it was not trained on it.
Yeah.
And so you're okay, well, it's useless.
Same with coding. So I find that a lot of the time Claude is either, or I say Claude because I use Claude, it's either suggesting the heaviest duty industrial strength backend in the world that is relevant for Amazon, or it's got no tests, no row level security. It's just the most bare bones vibe coded app you've ever seen, and this it's not very good at landing in between that. It's not very good at saying, actually, for a production app, you are going to need row level security. For a production app, we're going to put in OAuth and do all that's everything that's required there. Or we might need some orchestrators, some handlers, but we probably don't need to assume that we're going to be running 10,000 instances all at once with zero latency. So just like guiding it towards what is actually real, as you say.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like it doesn't have the middle mode. It's like either all or nothing.
Yeah,
it's very well. What about anything that you do personally to differentiate things that are true with AI versus that are not true in your work, in the content that you consume, in general? Like, trying to differentiate what matters and what doesn't matter. What do you do?
Yeah, so I'll answer content in a moment, but in my work, I always start with a clear goal in mind. So you really need to think about that and try really hard to describe what done looks like. Because as I said earlier, Claude always wants to do 5 more things. And so you need to have an idea of what's done. I use superpowers, and I use test-driven development for everything, including things that is probably overkill for, but given that I'm not the one writing the tests, for truly important functions, you should check the tests, because sometimes Claude will go and like write a failing test against something that is trivial. Does the function exist instead of does the function do what it ought to do? So I test it where it's important, and I have a clear idea of where I'm going so I can figure out when we're done. And then I have a corpus of data or expected results that I try and test it against, even if it's something trivial, like just a small math equation, just make sure it's running through. For content, I just assume that everything's AI. I can't pretend that I can tell the difference between a AI-generated image and a real image. Like I don't have the vigilance for it, so I'm just skeptical with any content I consume, to be honest.
Well, what about content and knowledge content?
So knowledge content. I think it might be apocryphal. But there's like an Einstein quote about if you truly understand something, you should be able to explain it simply. So if you're reading something and it's full of buzzwords, or you get to the end of a paragraph and you're not really sure what you read, you're like, thematically it's probably about this thing. That's a good indication that it's AI slop, and either the person who prompted it didn't understand that it was giving you a sloppy answer or didn't care. So I think there's real value to clarity of writing. Words, each one having a purpose, and leaving the jargon behind. So I really go for that. If someone knows something, they should be able to explain it simply.
This quote, when you said it at the presentation, it reminded me of the quote from, Steve Jobs was making a presentation many years ago, and he brought this quote from Alan Key, who said, people who are serious about their software, they should be making their own hardware. And I'm like, that's so similar. That is so similar.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Like if you're serious, you vertically integrate whatever you're trying to do because you want to control the full thing. And it's a maximalist approach.
Yeah.
But in many ways, you can understand why.
Yeah. It's true, right? Like software is just an expression of how an electron should travel across a circuit board. So I guess. There's an argument to be said that you should understand your hardware, but I'll be honest with you, I can barely program in C, and I definitely can't program in assembly, and I have no idea how to start programming in binary. So everything's abstracted at some point, right?
No, we're not ready for hardware yet.
No, not yet.
Anything you want to leave the viewers with from practical perspective on being better with AI? Anything that you found be useful for yourself in the last maybe, let's say, 2-3 months, something that like really improved your journey to get into the truth or get into AI to actually give you more value than before, from a real perspective, from the true perspective.
Yeah. So I'm totally pro like AI coding. Outside of some SQL queries, I don't think I've written a line of code for many months now. So like the purists out there, I don't agree with them. But understand the tools that you are using. You can really improve your outcomes with Claude by making sure that it has the context it needs. So at the end of every session, I have a mandatory rule that my Claude writes a handover, so I don't get context rot between sessions. Anything that I find myself repeating, I make sure that it is inserted into the Claude MD. I often have a agent that I call a cartographer, where I have projects sitting across multiple files or even multiple repos, where if I'm developing in one of those repos, the cartographer will update a map of the entire project so I can trace through my dependencies without finding out that something doesn't work in production. And finally, I think it's super generic advice now, but superpowers is just a really excellent set of skills to unlock at least one framework for development that I really like, which is a test-driven development framework. Make sure Claude knows your project. Make sure that you are aware that it's going to run out of context and you have some mechanism for it to communicate with itself over those context blocks. So I just use session handovers. Anything you do more than once should be a skill or a line in your Claude MD, and make sure that you understand your dependencies across all of your repos or folders as your project grows.
Jeremy, it was great pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming.
I've really enjoyed it, Sergey, and I'm really pleased to have been involved in the early days, and I'm looking forward to this growing and becoming the huge success that I'm sure that you'll make it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was awesome. Thank you.